Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Apples and Geno's Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot Niblink, and I'll be your host. I've got my guy Blake here with me, as always. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
We're feeling all right. Yeah, we were just talking off air here about our fantasy pools and how it's been kind of a garbage week. So, yeah, I'm a little disgruntled, a little salty, and that always makes for good podcasting. So, yeah, let's get the biz.
Yeah, it's been a week for me in my leagues. There's nothing like a good trouncing to make you reevaluate your existence and
Yeah,
your
totally.
ability as a fantasy hockey manager. I have in my cacuffle division, I've got one, two, three, four, five, six guys, seven guys out for today's games.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, that's how that one's going. And then I've got another one. I'm actually winning in the Apples and Geno's Patron League, so that feels good. But then I've
Low
got
key
another
brag
one.
right there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine.
little brag. You got to throw it
That's
in
fine.
there when
Yeah,
you
okay,
can.
no problem.
But it looks like I'm also gonna lose in my keeper league, actually to Devin from Fantasy Hockey Hacks. So good job to you,
Seven.
Devin. That's a
Yeah,
that's a big win. I even got a hat trick from ranting in today and still gonna lose. So that
that's a
about
shame.
sums it up for you. But
Oh, I'm
yeah,
with you, man.
these weeks happen. You gotta try to maintain the process and maintain the attitude that keeps you going in the long run. It is a long season. You can't let any one week get you down too much.
Yeah, we're playing the long game, everyone.
That's right. Well, by now I think everybody knows the drill. We're here to look at some players who've been performing well and some who have been performing poorly. Try to make sense of that performance thus far. We're also gonna run a little two truths and a lie to get us warmed up here, or maybe Blake's gonna run me three truths like I did to him last week in that legendary segment. But why don't we get into it, Blake? Why don't you hit me with it? Hit me with your two truths and a lie.
All right, I'll hit you. Yeah, and exactly. You don't know what's coming. All right, this could be three truths, three lies. I don't know. That's again just good podcasting. That's where we're at right now. All right, so let's go for the first one. So we're talking 5v5, okay? And actually, I like to call this JR edition, the Jason Robertson edition, because he's
All
such a
right.
legend, such a stud. Okay, so this is two truths and a lie JR edition. All right, first one 5v5. Zach Hyman has a higher individual scoring for per 60 than JR. All right.
Okay.
That's the first one. Second one, 5v5 as well. Jason Robertson has a higher shot per 60, individual shots per 60 than Austin Matthews. All right.
Okay.
Third one is a power play question. Tage Thompson has more power play points than Jason Robertson. All right. What do you got to say for yourself?
This is a tough one. This is pretty tough. I can see it either way with all three of these, if I'm being honest. At 5v5, Hyman has been a beast this year. Robertson has too, obviously, and gone on a terrific tear, but he has got a lot of production out of that power play. For sure. So you can see where Hyman could potentially playing with McDavid as he has all year. He could be edging out Robertson in the individual scoring chances for per 60. The shots per 60 at 5v5, I could see that either way as well. Matthews typically, I would say higher, but Robertson had a massive bender where he was just throwing up shots every night. And then the power play, Tage Thompson more power play points than Robertson. I can see that one too. I am gonna go with I'm going to go with the first one. I'm going to go with the lie being Zach Hyman has a higher individual scoring chances for per 60.
This was tough, man, because I love that you say this is really could be either way because all of these were right in the same vicinity of each other. There's
Right.
nothing.
That makes
So
sense.
yeah, of course, these are all very close. But yeah, that unfortunately number one is true. Zach Hyman has a higher individual scoring for per 60 5v5 than JR. Crazy stuff. The
That is impressive.
lie is the second one. Jason Robertson has a higher shots per 60 individual than Austin Matthews.
At
Yeah.
5v5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matthews has got the advantage there. So yeah. And then Tage Thompson has more power play points than JR. That was a little surprising, actually. I mean, obviously Tage Thompson's elite so far this season, but maybe we'll talk about him a little later. Who knows?
Yeah, we definitely will. Yeah, I think maybe I should have thought about that a little more. Matthews has always been, an absolutely elite 5v5 performer and actually hasn't been that terrific on the power play historically. So maybe I could have used some historical context to try to sniff that one out. But definitely, I think these are all very close in my mind. And as you say, they were actually close in real life. So
That's right. That's the only way to beat the master. All right. You gotta put them right next to each other. Basically, that's the only way. It's a coin flip.
All right. Well, let's keep it rolling. Let's get into performing well. And we will talk about Tage Thompson right off the top here. We kind of have to. If we're talking about players performing well, nobody's performing better than Tage Thompson unless your name's Connor McDavid. Tage Thompson, 7 goals, 12 points in his last 5 games. 19 minutes, 35 seconds average time on ice. Is there really anything to say about Tage Thompson that hasn't already been said at this point? Like, what can we really say but just do what we did with J-Rob a little while
Yeah.
back and just marvel and bow down in awe?
Pretty much. I mean, it's just exciting, just as a sports fan, when you got a guy that's doing this, right? I mean, yeah, pointless in his last game, but we're talking about a 6-point game, 5 goals. Whenever I hear
Mm-hmm.
5 goals, I don't know if they do this, in Ontario or any other teams, but here in Vancouver, if a player scores 5 goals, like on the broadcast, they used to have, someone has the potential to win $1 million. So it's like when I saw that, I'm like, oh man, that'd be so sweet if he just won somebody some money. But yeah, 5 goals. And didn't he have 4 of them in the first period?
Yep.
Like, it's
Yeah,
just
4 in the
ludicrous.
first.
And they were all beauties. I mean, granted that game, Columbus was, I don't know what they were doing. They're a terrible team, and they played terrible even for them. Like, that was just
Yep.
atrocious. It was a power play thrashing. But Tage Thompson was on one. He was just, one-timers all over the place, bar down, crazy
Yep.
plays. Yeah, I'm just excited about this kid. Like, I don't think I certainly didn't expect anything like this. I don't know what you had him projected for, but I'd be interested to know if anyone kind of saw this level of production coming. Because when he signed his contract over the summer, I thought it was a great contract, but it was also it seemed like a risky contract. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if he performed at the level he did last year, it seemed like a reasonable contract. But now, like, if he can get into like the 90-point range, and right now he's on pace for 120 points,
Yeah.
like that's I don't see how that can happen, but can it? I don't know. I mean, he's had an amazing quarter of a season, third of a season, and he's just a fun guy to watch. Plus, he's huge. He looks huge on the
Yeah.
ice. He's 6'7", 220, crazy hands. I mean, well done, Tage. You're doing well. All right, Mr. Thompson. That's what you have to
Yeah.
call him, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah. It's pretty hard to argue against Tage Thompson at this
Yeah.
stage. Like, if you go by the course of the whole season, Tage Thompson, third in shots per 60. He's only behind Pasternak and Brady Tkachuk there, ahead of, Robertson, McKinnon, Meyer, Matthews, Ovechkin, all those guys that you expect to be up there. And in terms of the individual scoring chances for per 60, he's third there as well, behind Tkachuk and Matthews. Like, he's doing the thing, right? He's right there with all the
That's on fire.
greats.
Yeah.
And it's a 28 game sample at this point. Like, it's not like it's a 5-game heater. This last little bit has been a 5-game heater, but he's been doing it over the course of the season till now. Yeah, definitely 120 point pace. I don't really see that hanging up for the full season. I had him projected for 69 points. Pretty
Nice.
nice total. Yeah. At the beginning of the season, but I also had him taking a step back in the shooting percentage because last year was kind of the first time he had stepped up in the shooting percentage. He had kind of, he obviously had been very different deployment and stuff before, but he had always been actually like a sub 9% shooter. And then last year he shot 15%, and I just wasn't sure if he was a 15% shooter. So I had him taking a step back there. This year he's at 16.1. So, it seems like he's this guy, but on top of that, he's just like taking his shots per 60 and his scoring chances per 60 to a whole new level. And that's just really impressive to see. And that's what gives me, confidence that he's actually going to be able to sustain this. And on top of that, Buffalo as a team has taken a step. His on-ice numbers are light years ahead of where they were last year, where I didn't really project that step for Buffalo as a team. So definitely, I think Thompson, I had him projected for 69 points on an individual level. I see him eclipsing that. On a team level, I see him eclipsing that. I definitely think that 90 plus points it would be my projection moving forward. Possibly 100 points projection moving forward as a pace. Not 120. He's still a bit rich for my liking in the on ice shooting percentage in particular, up at 15% right now. But yeah, he's right up there for me with all the elites of the league in terms of all the stats that I look for. I really can't say bad things about Tage Thompson at this point. You can argue whether he's gonna, end up in the top 5 in league scoring at the end of the year, but like that's really the only argument you're having with Tage Thompson at this point.
Did you pick him up anywhere in any of your teams?
I didn't. So I kind of saw this coming a little bit. I don't remember if I wrote about it or if I was just thinking it to myself, but there was a point maybe 8 or 9 games into the season, and it was right before he went off, and he had these underlying numbers
Yeah,
were
I
already
remember.
there,
Yeah.
and I was like, I gotta go get Tage Thompson, and so I sent offers for him, and I don't remember who I offered for him at this point, but it clearly wasn't enough because I should have offered basically my best players
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Tage Thompson, and I could have got that deal done at the time. But I was in on Tage Thompson, just not in enough, I guess, to take full advantage of this huge breakout here.
Yeah, I don't see how you could predict this, but I mean, this guy, anyone who picked him up, I mean, you were getting him, I don't know, around 100, maybe, or I mean,
Probably
70
later. Yeah.
later. Yeah. So, oh
Yeah.
my
In
goodness,
some
like
leagues, anyway.
that's what we're talking about, like a league winner, right? Or I'd be
Exactly.
interested to see, yeah, take a look at the top guy in your leagues, and that's who I've been playing. 2 of the teams I'm playing this week have Tage Thompson.
There you go.
Yeah. And one of them has cousins too. I mean, they're just going crazy in Buffalo right now. So, yeah, it's been a crappy week over here, but well done, Double T.
All right, let's keep it rolling. Pierre-Luc Dubois, quietly. I haven't heard a lot of talk about Dubois, but 3 goals, 8 points his last 5 games, 17:38 average time on ice. Does have some unsustainability in his underlying numbers. The luck metrics here: 73% IPP, 33% shooting percentage, and 19.6% on ice shooting percentage over these last 5 games. And it doesn't really get borne out in some of the underlying stats that I like to look at. 258th in shots per 60, 116th in individual scoring chances for per 60. Definitely, though, Winnipeg as a team has been rolling. 34th in Corsi 4 per 60 and 9th in scoring chances 4 per 60. So definitely that team context is better than I gave it credit for. And I'm interested, to see where that goes moving forward. But I do think that Dubois might have some pretty clear signs of unsustainability for the rest of the season, or at least based on this latest stretch of 8 points in 5 games. Where are we at with Dubois, Blake?
Yeah, I've got him in a couple spots. I ended up picking him because I faded centers a lot, and he was always available sort of later on because I always tend to do this in leagues too, is I pick all skill players, and then I'm like, oh, dang, like I need hits, blocks, like all this other stuff, right? And then he was just sitting there. So, and he dropped a little bit too. So I like PLD. I mean, yeah, his numbers are showing like, he's on a bit of a hot streak, and it's not exactly sustainable. Like right now he's on he's on an 85 point pace for the season. Last year he got 60 points. I think that's much more reasonable. I feel like, yeah, he's just on a hot streak right now, and he's probably going to cool way off, but like you said, Winnipeg is playing well, and he's getting some good opportunities with some good players, but I like PLD a lot. I think, he's giving you the periffs for a forward. He's doing like a hit a game. I think he's capable of more than that. I mean, last season he had 112 hits. I'm not sure if he'll reach 100 this year, but he's just an overall, I don't know. I don't get too excited about PLD, but he's like a nice supplementary piece on your team because he does other things besides score and all that. So, and he's in a good position, and no one's really coming for his minutes. So, yeah, I like PLD. I'm on board, baby.
Yeah, the biggest thing long-term with PLD for me is that right now he's rocking an 18.6% shooting percentage on the year. And typically, like, you have to go back to 2018, 2019 to get a 15.5, which is his career mark before this year. More typically, he's been in the 11 to 12% range throughout his career. So That's my biggest concern with Dubois. Now, certainly, those Columbus teams that he was on, definitely not world-beating teams, and so you could expect that with some better players, he might get a little bit better shooting percentage. But also his IPP is on the high side. The on-ice shooting percentage is a little bit on the high side. There's just a little bit of unsustainability kind of across the board with PLD right now. So, yeah, I think maybe he's a 70-point player this year. Like that's definitely possible, but definitely he's running a bit hot right now. All right, Taylor Hall, number 3, 5 goals, 7 points last 5 games. Who saw this coming? 15:45 average time on ice. He's playing on line 3 with Charlie Coyle and Trent Frederick, and he's putting up these numbers. What do we make of Taylor Hall? Do we have to get back into Taylor Hall after kind of finally writing him off after all these years? What are we doing?
Yeah, for me, I mean, Taylor Hall's not really on my radar. I was, 5 goals in 5 games. That's very nice, but it's just all comes down to the deployment. Like, look at his shooting percentage too. Like he's converting, right? That's the big difference here. All his numbers are down, right? Even this season, he's less time on ice than last year, which is less than the year before that, which is less than the year before that. I mean, it's so strange. He's only 31, but this is kind of the player, just sort of toiling away. He's not really. I don't know. I don't get too excited over Taylor Hall, even though he's having this kind of a little bit of resurgence. Like I don't see him doing much more than what he did last year. That isn't it crazy that Taylor Hall won the Hart Trophy?
Yeah.
It's so crazy that, I remember 2 or 3 years just after that, you draft him pretty high because you're like, oh, he's of that pedigree, right? And it's just never come back to that point. And I wonder, everything must have just came together perfectly for Taylor Hall that year. Right teammates, right everything. And he just hasn't been able to recreate it. But that said, Boston is looking very good this year. So, if he's in the top 6 there, or he's on the third line right now, but he's getting power play time. So I don't know. You just got to manage your expectations with Taylor Hall. This is not going to continue, right? And so 60 points last year. I think 60 points, I don't know. I think 55, 60 points for Taylor Hall this year is like a nice season for Taylor Hall.
Yep. Yeah, I'm pretty much in line with you there. The big thing with Taylor Hall, looking back, had all his shooting percentages. So you have the Hart Trophy year where he shot 14%, and basically like every other year he's been sub 10% since like 2014. So this year he's up at 15.3% on the season. So obviously kind of outstripping his previous numbers. I will say that, last 5 games, 13th in the league in shots per 60. On ice numbers look pretty good in the 30s in Corsi 4 per 60 and scoring chances 4 per 60, even despite that line 3 deployment. But yeah, until I see him, on the top power play on the second line at least, then I'm really not that interested in Taylor Hall. He can have benders like this because he's kind of a volume shooter kind of guy. When the pucks are going in, everything looks great. And then when the luck starts to dry off a little bit, then he really starts to hurt you. So, yeah, I'm pretty much in line exactly with what you're saying. 55, 60 points would be a good solid season for Taylor Hall. I wouldn't try to expect anything more of Hall. So for me, he's really just kind of in your average, 10 or 12 team league, he's more of a streamer level guy than anything more, anybody that I'm looking to hang on to or acquire for the rest of the season.
But he's a nice person. So let's agree on that. Yeah.
I've heard some
he's not
stories to the contrary, to be honest.
All right.
But
all right, well,
yeah, he played some junior hockey in Kingston, which is close to where I grew up, and I've heard some stories. But maybe he's matured in his later years. I don't want to besmirch the man's reputation at
That's
age
right.
31
Yeah,
for what
he's
he
probably
did as a
listening too,
teenager.
so we have to be careful. Yeah,
Exactly.
He does listen to these podcasts. He's really on top of fantasy hockey. So yeah,
that's true. All right, let's keep going. Let's go with someone whose reputation is unbesmirchable. That's Nazem Kadri. 3 goals, 6 points his last 5 games. 17 minutes, 58 seconds average time on ice. Over these last 5 games, an 86% IPP, 20% shooting percentage, just a 10.9% on ice shooting percentage, which doesn't raise any eyebrows with me. Kadri, are we buying into the resurgence? Do we think this is... does this portend anything to come for the rest of the season? Do we think that he might just be finally getting on track in Calgary, or we think this is going to go back the way of the dodo bird and we're going to be disappointed with Kadri long term.
Yeah, I think things are evening out for Kadri, right? Because he was very cold. I don't remember, but we might have talked about him as in one of our cold segments, right? Because that's just how he's been this year. The Flames in general, all their top guns have really been underperforming, and Kadri's no different, right? So I think that he's just leveling off a little bit, but it is nice to see. I didn't expect him to stay as cold as he was, right? But truthfully, even with this recent play here, he's still only on a 62 point pace for the season, and that might be it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like this is a player that I called for as a bust at the beginning of the year, and it was an easy call because he was on a 100 point pace last year.
Right.
On the back of like crazy assists with the Colorado Avalanche and 29 power play points. So that's not
Yeah.
really going to happen again, right? So, but I mean, he's doing well in the power play this year. He's a great power play player, that's for sure. So I don't know. He should be rostered for sure. And yeah, Calgary's got a great schedule coming up this week. So if you got Kadri, you're probably loving it because he's rounding into form, and you got four games next week, all on off nights. So yeah, I don't expect. I expect 60 to 70 points from Kadri for the season. This is nice to see. I knew he wasn't going to be as bad as he was, but he's not going to get close to what he did last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm again pretty much in line with you there. Couple big differences. So Kadri as an individual player has not looked all that different from last year in Colorado. The shots per 60, the individual scoring chances for per 60 is actually up from last year, but he's 2 minutes down on average from Colorado, which I don't think a lot of people saw coming, that he would, lose ice time coming over to Calgary from Colorado, but that's what's happened. He's lost about 2 minutes there. And then obviously the on ice, nothing can beat playing in Colorado. So the on ice has decreased somewhat this year. It's still very good. It's just not as elite as it was with Colorado last year. So I projected Kadri for 64 points on the season at the beginning of the year, 62-point pace right now. Kind of feels like that might be who he is. I don't really see a lot in his numbers. The on ice, the IPP, the shooting percentage, all feels pretty in line to me. I kind of just feel like this is who he is. This latest streak is just, like you said, him evening out a little bit. And yeah, I think that's what you should expect from Kadri moving forward. He could obviously have some of these hot streaks. Yeah, he's got 17-12 average time on ice for the season, 17:58 this last little stretch. So maybe, if he buys himself an extra minute per game, you could see him boost that up into, the high 60s rather than the low 60s or something like that. But you're not talking about, 10 plus extra points just from 1 minute average time on ice. So yeah, to me, Kadri feels a little bit like an open and shut book, if
Yeah.
I'm really being honest. I really think this is the guy who I thought he was at the beginning of the season. He's kind of proven it, and he's doing it despite Calgary as a team not being as good as I thought they would be. Kadri is kind of exactly who I thought he would be. So that's what I've got to say about Kadri.
Yeah, that's definitely been a surprise, Calgary this year. I didn't see that coming. There's been a lot of surprises in the NHL this year. Just
Yeah.
we're talking about Tage Thompson, Calgary, just even my man Juicy Saros. I got to throw that in there. Guy's playing terrible, but Kadri does other things, right? So I think we loved him in fantasy last year. If you had him, you probably overdrafted him this year. Calgary overpaid him because he played very well. But he does other things. So if Calgary can get themselves in the playoff picture, they're going to be happy with the player they have. But fantasy wise, meh.
Absolutely. All right, let's get on to the titular player of this episode, and that's Shayne Gostisbehere. And Gostisbehere is on a heater again. All of a sudden, 2 goals, 6 points in the last 5 games, 21-25 average time on ice. The IPP is a bit eye-popping here at 86% and a 29% shooting percentage. 13.5% on ice shooting percentage, also pretty high. If you look at the underlying numbers, I'm pretty concerned about these numbers. 88th among defensemen in shots per 60, 112th in individual Corsi for per 60. And then you would expect, being from Arizona, that the on ice numbers are not that great, and they aren't. 106th in Corsi for per 60, 69th nice in scoring chances for per 60. So Gostisbehere hot once again. The underlying numbers don't seem to support it. The guy's on a 66-point pace for the season. But what do you really expect from him moving forward?
I like it. I don't expect 63, but again, in draft season, Gostisbehere was one of those guys. If you faded D a little bit, or you picked up a couple top D and then left it for a few rounds, Gostisbehere, guys like Gostisbehere, Tyson Berry were there at the end, right? And
Yeah.
Gostisbehere was a guy I targeted a little bit. I've got him only on one team, but yeah, I'm happy for the guy. I think it's great. But yeah, 63 points. I don't think so. Maybe 50 though. 50 from Gostisbehere would be sweet on that team. And I'm just looking at Daily Faceoff here right now. They're showing him and Chikrin on the second power play, and JJ Moser is getting the time on power play 1. So that's interesting. Yeah. Because I know they were running Gostisbehere and Chikrin on power play 1 for a little bit there, and then obviously, last year Gostisbehere was the point by himself. So yeah, he's got a good role here. I think that obviously they're happy with the player they have, and he's just one of these guys that's kind of a no thought. You know what I mean? If you have him, you're probably super stoked because you got him late, right? And he's putting up really good points. And I don't know, what are his perfs like? Yeah, decent.
Yeah,
he's not really doing anything.
Yeah, he's not really that guy.
13 hits. What are you doing, buddy? Come on. Throw the body around. All right.
He will block a few shots for you, but he's definitely not hitting anybody.
All right. Well, that's disappointing. Gostisbehere. All right. I don't appreciate that. And why do you spell your name with a Y? I don't appreciate that either. When I was trying to search the man, I'm like, what's happening here? Anyways, you're probably happy if you got Gostisbehere. It's hard to be excited about anyone on Arizona, really. Like I try, like Nick Schmaltz. I tried. Even JJ Moser. I'm like, oh, okay. Let me look at this guy. I'm like, nah. Clayton Keller, nah. So yeah, I'm happy for the guy. I think 50 points is within reach, and if you drafted him, you're probably loving that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do have Gostisbehere in one spot. I've been very happy to have him through there. It's interesting to look at his numbers. So yes, the on ice context in Arizona is pretty bleak. It's always going to be bleak. It's never going to be good. But Gostisbehere is going to be kind of the driver of that bus. So the things that you would expect to be unsustainable are going to be a little bit more sustainable for Gostisbehere because he simply is kind of the best offensive player, or one of the top 3 or 4 best offensive players on that team. So like last year, Gostisbehere played all 82 games and he had a 58% IPP, which is astronomically high for a defenseman. That's without looking, that's probably in the top 5 among all defensemen last year. And he shot 9.3%, which is also astronomically high for a defenseman. But this is a guy who the year before that shot 10.6%. This year he's shooting 11.5%. That's high, and I do think that he probably won't shoot 11.5% on the season, but you're looking at 2 seasons previous where he shot above 9%. It's not that crazy. The IPP, I assume, will be high just because if pucks are going in Arizona, he's a part of it. So while he's got a 67% IPP on the season, the 58% he posted last year doesn't seem all that crazy when you take into account the situation. So as long as he's getting this 21, 22 minutes a night, as long as he's getting power play 1, that is a really weird development that he was on the second power play and Chikrin was on the second power play the other night. I don't know what to make of that. I can't imagine that keeps up. So I guess it's just something to monitor moving forward. But yeah, Gostisbehere definitely hasn't been playing particularly well individually the last 5 games, despite the point totals. So yeah, if there is a spot here to move off of him, then maybe you could look to do that. I honestly don't know if there's much of a market for Shayne Gostisbehere, even though he's on this 66-point pace. I feel like most people just have it in their heads that you can't acquire players from Arizona, and his value is just kind of always going to be depressed because of his situation. So I think Gostisbehere is probably a guy where, he's going to go through a stretch like this where he gets you 6 points in 5 games. He's probably starting tomorrow going to go through a stretch where he gets you no points in 4 games, and you're going to be like, what am I doing with this guy from Arizona on my team? team. But that's kind of the ups and downs of a season with Gostisbehere. And yeah, I think 50 to 55 points is probably where I would slot him in for the rest of the season. I don't think that's too crazy, even though it is a bad team. Like Gostisbehere, when he's played, has been a borderline elite offensive producer from the blue line. It would be really interesting to see, like, if he was dropped into, Edmonton's power play, or if he was dropped into Toronto's power play or something like that, just to see what kind of heights he could hit, because I do think there's a 70-plus point player inside of Gostisbehere if everything went perfectly. So I do think that, he's a talented player. The underlying numbers are high because he's the most talented player in Arizona or close to it. So I think he's just one of these guys. Again, this mold of defenseman that I keep talking about with these Tyson Berries and these other guys, where they're going to go through stretches where you're going to be pulling your hair out and wondering, what do I do with this guy? He's not doing anything. And then they're going to go through another stretch the next week where they put up 6 points. And you got to just take the good with the bad with these guys and kind of ride it out over the course of a full season, because that's the way that it's going to go with them.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the nice things about Gostisbehere, just that separates him a little bit, is he scores goals for a defenseman. You were talking about trades, and I always find it difficult to trade defensemen. I mean, depends on the format of your league, but people, for the most part, they want offense, right? And a good defenseman season, like 55, 60 points, like that's great. Well, a good forward season is like 120 points, so even just that, you're already kind of on the back foot trying to trade someone. But that's the nice thing about Gostisbehere. He puts up goals. Like, he could get 10 goals for defensemen pretty easily, I think. And that's nice, right? Because a lot of the other defensemen sort of in his tier, especially, like, they're not even going to come close to 10 goals. So I do like that. Question for you: if someone dropped Gostisbehere in your league, any league, would you pick him up? Like, is he like a must-add player?
The only place that I'd say he's not a must-add player is probably a like Bangers Cats league, where it might depend a little bit on what you have at defense already and how he fits into your lineup. In most other places, yeah, he probably is. I had a question in the Discord today, actually, about Gostisbehere getting dropped, and they were saying, I've got guys like Trocheck and Keller was on that list, and what do I do? Do I drop either of those guys or one of my goalies for Gostisbehere? And I think you got to make room for a guy like Gostisbehere. If you need that fourth defenseman, then Gostisbehere is your fourth defenseman. You're laughing, in my opinion, in basically any kind of points league. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with them.
Do me a favor. Do not drop Trocheck for Gostisbehere. All right, please. Trocheck, that's my man. All right, I'm riding with that man to the end of the season. He's probably going to get me 40 points only. He'll get injured. Yeah, it's going to be a debacle, but I'm riding with Tro for show. All right.
Yeah, Trocheck and D'Angelo, we know you're two guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, those are my guys. Yeah, big time. Big time.
All right, let's keep going. Let's go to Kasperi Kapanen, who I did not expect to be talking about, but suddenly he's 4 goals, 6 points last 5 games. This is a little bit of a case study in why you look at some of the underlying stats with these players and don't just go off point totals. So Kapanen, 100% IPP, 44% shooting percentage, and a 17.7% on ice shooting percentage across these 5 games. 100th in shots per 60, which is at least respectable, if not impressive, but 197th in individual scoring chances for per 60. Then you get into the on-ice numbers, 319th in Corsi 4 per 60, 292nd in scoring chances 4 per 60. Kapanen, to me, is nothing more than a flash in the pan. This is a guy who's routinely getting scratched earlier in the season, found his way back into the lineup. I guess that motivated him a bit, maybe you could say, and he's put on a little bit of a hot streak here, but there's nothing here for me with Kasperi Kapanen. Like, it would have to be the deepest of deep leagues for me to even consider rostering this guy. Do you have any interest in Kapanen, or can we keep going?
Yeah, no, hell no. Yeah, I was actually surprised because, like you said, why are we talking about this guy? Well, he's having a little streak, so that's nice. But he's never gotten more than, like, his best season is 44 points in 78 games. Like this guy's, and he's playing, like you said, what's his time on ice in the last 5? Like 11:32. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no thanks. Like if you picked him up, good for you. Yeah, deep league, enjoy the production. You're gonna drop him next week anyway. So, but yeah, good job. We're talking about 2 third liners here. That's kind of neat, actually. Yeah, third line. Is he getting any power play time, Kapanen? So I was just
I
looking at.
didn't even check, to be
Oh yeah,
honest with you, because
he's on this. He's on the second. Sorry, I got it right here. Yeah,
there you go.
he's on the point in the second. What about Chris Letang coming back from a stroke?
That is
What the
pretty
hell? And he had
wild.
an insane game. He had like 7 shots, 3 hits. What a! I mean, we need to figure out who his doctors are first off, because they're
Exactly.
either like the best doctors in the world or they're the most negligent doctors we've ever seen. All right, what are we
One or
doing?
the other.
Yeah, this man just had a stroke. But yeah, well done. Chris Letang, what a beast. What a beauty.
Absolutely. Yeah, hats off to Letang. Hopefully that is the last of those health issues for him.
Yes, please.
Absolutely. I hope that he goes on to have as many years of playing stroke-free as possible for the rest of his career. So, yeah, definitely good to see him back on the ice and apparently suffering no further ill effects.
Yeah, that's
Let's
wild.
get into the last player here, similar to Captain in many respects, Matias Maccelli. So this is a guy, he's on a 68-point pace, believe it or not, in Arizona. 19 points in 23 games. And, the ice time is 16 minutes, 3 seconds over the last 5 games. So that's, it's not great, but it's respectable. He's got a goal and 6 points in the last 5 games here. For me, this is another case of a guy who's just kind of playing over his head, and at this point has been for 23 games. It does happen. It happens every year. Last year we talked about how Matt Duchene overperformed for a whole season. This is kind of a little bit of a microcosm of that in some respects. But Maccelli, 500th in shots per 60 over the last 5 games. That I'm just gonna stop reading the advanced stats right there.
Against all odds.
Yeah, somehow this guy continues to put up points despite it not making any sense whatsoever from a statistical perspective. Yeah, I've had questions about Maccelli, so I wanted to bring him up. But for me, Maccelli is, I guess if you picked him up because he was scoring points, then well done. But you should probably punt him into the sun, because there's absolutely no chance this continues for any length of time.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you brought this guy up, because just this last week, I didn't even know who this player is. I've never seen him play, so I can't talk super intelligently on what this man is doing. But nice season he's put together so far. Who's he even playing with? He's on the second line with Nick Bjugstad. How do you say that name? Lawson Krause. He's a good player. But is he getting power play time? Yeah, he's getting power play time
second
too.
Power play. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I put him on my watch list because I'm like, who the heck is this? But it's nice to hear the statistics don't back up any of this. Like, this doesn't make any sense, So yeah, put him on the watch list. Move on.
Absolutely.
That's
all right. That's all I got, man. Before we get into the players performing poorly, we do got to talk about the Apples and Ginos Discord server. I talk about it every week, but we've got, 500, almost 600 now like-minded fantasy managers in there. You can come talk to them, talk to us, get our thoughts on your latest trade or sit start or whatever the case may be. Whatever's bothering you from a fantasy hockey perspective, that's what the Discord's there for. If you're looking for specifically for help with, waiver wire pickups each week, you can check out the Patreon. $5 a month. You get a weekly article detailing all of the best pickups for the upcoming week. That also includes some long-term plays for you as well. Both of the links are in the show description. And I'm also, at this point, going to be offering another giveaway for some merch, some Apples and Ginos merch. I did this a while back, and I'm going to do it again for the holidays here. Might not arrive in time for Christmas at this point, but over the next week here, what I need you to do, if you want to be entered, is to rate or review the podcast. If you've already done that, then just take a screenshot of it for me. Send it my way. You can find me on Twitter at Apples Ginos. You can find me in the Discord. If you're in there, just at Nate in the Discord, and that'll be me. So find a way to get me a screenshot of you rating and / or reviewing the podcast, and I will definitely be giving away a Apples and Geno's merch item of your choice to the lucky winner on this show next week. So stay tuned for that. All right, performing poorly. We got to do it. We got to do it to these guys. And we got to start once again with my guy, unfortunately, Mackenzie Weegar. 0 points last 5 games, 20 minutes average time on ice, 9.8% on ice shooting percentage, but obviously he's not factored into any of that. 128th amongst defensemen in shots per 60, 157th in individual Corsi 4 per 60 over these last 5 games. On ice numbers, not much better. 97th in Corsi 4 per 60, 138th in scoring chances 4 per 60. I really thought that Weegar was going to be something in Calgary. I thought they acquired him to give him a big role. I thought there's a chance that he took over top power play from Rasmus Andersson. Nothing has come to fruition the way I saw it with Mackenzie Weegar, and he has just been truly awful all season long. Are you holding on to Weegar anywhere? Have you already kicked him to the curb? What do we do with Weegar if we're still hanging on?
It's been rough. There's no question. I'm holding them. I've got them in 2 spots, but they are bangers cats leagues. So that's really his only value that he's providing right now. I mean, 63 hits in 28 games. That's nice. 43 blocks, 28 games. That's nice. Okay. But he's not, he's got 6 assists in 28 games. And his what's his ice time? Oh man, yeah, he's down 3, almost 3 minutes from last season. Yeah, it's just a surprise. This is going to be a bust this year. I think that we can probably lock that in as a bust. It's just I didn't expect anything like even a 50-point season from Weegar, but I expected 40 to 45 points with amazing peripherals and some decent power play numbers, and that just is not going to happen. He's not on power play 1. He's not on power play 2. He's not killing penalties. It's weird. Like, so, I mean, maybe Weegar was just a throw-in for this trade. Like, they didn't really target him. I thought you bring a player over, you think that they're going to get a chance to do something. And it doesn't seem like Weegar really is in their plans in that way. Plus, he's a 28-year-old defenseman. I mean, they might be prioritizing younger players. Obviously Rasmus Andersson is their guy there that they're going to offensively. But yeah, no, it's been rough. I didn't see this happening. I thought he would be able to sort of duplicate what he did last year with maybe a chance of doing a little bit better. And I think, yeah, if you're holding him, he could be a drop. You could drop Weegar and it's not the end of the world. Like, you could probably pick up someone, go get Sean Dursey. The guy's playing out of his mind right now. And Doughty's injured. So, but there's other players out there that can probably get you what you need. If you need peripherals, Weegar is good to go. He's going to provide that for you. And I'd like to think like this deployment can't last all season. Seasons are long. Like the Flames are going to get injured. I don't wish for any injuries, but on the teams where I have Mackie Weegs, like maybe Anderson could take a little break. All right, let's get Mackie Weegs in there. All right, give me some PPAs. All right, what are we doing? But yeah, it's been disappointing to say the least.
Yep. Yeah, the only thing keeping Weegar on my roster currently is the fact that Calgary has a really nice schedule this upcoming week. 4 games, 4 off nights. Other than that, I probably would be dropping Weegar at this point. It's really hard to see a path forward. Like, Calgary as a team is not scoring the way we thought they would score. Right. Weegar is not being deployed in any offensive context whatsoever. It really seems like there's no path to him being on the top power play unit. The second power play unit is nothing to write home about there in Calgary. So even if he got on the second power play unit, it still feels like he's one away from it actually being worth something. So yeah, bangers cats leagues, sure, he provides that, but like 6 assists, man. And at this point in the season, like, he's dead weight. There are plenty of better guys. Like, you'd be better off with Luke Shen or somebody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's getting more points.
Yeah.
Who predicted that?
Yeah, it's wild with Weegar. I am kind of at a loss. I'm gonna have to do a bit more of a deep dive on why I think I projected him so highly relative to his output. I don't think anyone would have predicted him, to have 6 assists only at this point. But my projection wasn't even based on him necessarily getting top power play. There was a chance of it, I guess, baked in there a little bit, but Man, I don't know what to say about Uyghur other than I'm in my one spot. I'm holding him for this week because it's the really sweet schedule. And then unless he really, shows me something spectacular this week, after this week, he's probably done. That's where I'm at with Uyghur. Sorry to say it, but he can go be dead weight on somebody else's roster at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, this at the end of the season we find out, he's been battling an injury or there's some personal issues or there's some issues with the coach, something like that. This doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at a loss for words on it too. Just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, among other things that don't make sense, Jesse Puljujärvi, 0 points last 5 games. In those last 5 games, 13 minutes, 40 seconds average time on ice, has been demoted. He's gotten extensive looks in the top six. He's played with Draisaitl, played with McDavid, been moved all around there, now demoted to the third line, and basically an afterthought in Edmonton. Had some interesting stuff come out in the media this past week. Really seems like he's going to get moved at some point as soon as Edmonton finds a suitor for him. The advanced stats not looking good here. Last 5 games, 257th in shots per 60. On ice numbers, 255th in Corsi 4 per 60, 253rd in scoring chances 4 per 60. So really nothing under the hood to excite you about Puljujärvi. This is a guy that did excite me at one point. The individual scoring chance numbers were there. I think that Puljujärvi is probably just a much worse finisher than I thought originally, and so I probably can't ever expect him to, really pop off. But I do think that, there's probably a 20 to 25 goal scorer with a bunch of hits in there with Puljujärvi in the right situation. This is kind of a case study for me and one I wanted to bring up because I was pretty excited about Puljujärvi a season or two ago based on some individual scoring chance numbers. But you also got to think about finishing ability. And that's a lot harder to realize sometimes because anybody can go on a shooting percentage bender where, pucks get bounced in off their butt or whatever for a full season, Matt Duchene. And then the following season comes along and all of a sudden it's much harder for these pucks to be going in. So Puljujärvi feels like that kind of guy and feels like a lesson I had to learn the hard way where there's got to be a way to quantify that finishing ability and not just be totally sold out on the underlying stats.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's confidence. Like, he said something recently too in the media, which is, it was just, I can't remember the exact quote, but basically he was just saying something along the lines of like, I can't play hockey anymore. Like if I can't make this work, like obviously, maybe I shouldn't play anymore. Like he was saying things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And just as a hockey player myself, yeah, like you got that kind of attitude going on. Like there's no way you're going to be successful. Right. He's a young guy too. He's only 24. And he's had some okay seasons in the past. He's battled some injuries and things like that. But, and I also think too, like a lot of people, when you say, oh, well, he played with McDavid and Draisaitl, like, why can't you get any points? Like, it's not that simple, like I remember the Sedins were like that too. Well, as a Canuck fan, like, oh, put on the line with Sedins, you should get like an easy 60 points. No problem. It's like, no, they're very specific type of players. Right. And
Right.
Draisaitl and McDavid know what they're doing together, but just because you throw a person on there doesn't mean they're going to get a bunch of points. But for whatever reason, this guy has zero confidence right now. And that, it's, I hope he needs a move of some kind. Like I think he's worn out his welcome there in Edmonton. 1 goal in 28 games. Yikes! That's not what you expected from this guy. So yeah, it's tough to see, especially like he was a 4th overall pick. So yeah, bit of a bust for sure there. But I think he needs somewhere new to go. But yeah, until he gets traded, this guy should be on the waiver wire permanently.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of an Alex Galchenyuk, another high pedigree player who, had some moments of success, but then kind of fell off, and it really did seem to be a confidence thing. So Puljujärvi might fit into that category as well.
Well, remember Patrick Laine like a couple years ago when Torts was was the coach, and he was like a different player. It's like, what happened to the guy? And this think about Puljujärvi too. He comes from being the best player on his team, the most offensive, the most dominant, and then he's kind of sidelined, and for whatever reason, it's just, yeah, his confidence is shot. So he needs something. He needs a couple things to go right, and yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen this season.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's keep going. Jake Sanderson, unfortunately making this list, 1 point in his last 5 games, almost 22 minutes average time on ice. The underlying numbers not looking so hot here. 120th in shots per 60, 101st in individual Corsi 4 per 60, 69th in Corsi 4 per 60. That's the on ice number, which is nice, I guess, but not great. 89th in scoring chances 4 per 60. So Sanderson, somebody I've been touting a lot, especially to the Patreon members, and someone that I do believe in long term still. Has definitely shown stretches where he can put up bigger numbers. Was pretty good when he was on the top power play there while Shabbat was out. And so I do think that Sanderson has all the potential in the world, but definitely on a downtrend right now. What would you do with Sanderson if you're still hanging on to him anywhere there, Blake?
Yeah, I dropped him in a couple spots. Just he's a streamer level right now. I think that's pretty clear. But yeah, everything you said is correct. Like this, I think this guy's gonna have a great career. Right now, he's behind in the pecking order in Ottawa. There, when Shabbat was out, I had him. I had him the whole time, and he was doing stuff. You just have to manage your expectations with players like this. I mean, this is his rookie season. I don't think he's going to be like a Mo Sider or anything like that. He doesn't have the pathway to that in Ottawa right now. Mm-hmm. There's too many roosters in the henhouse there too, right? So there's a lot of people that need the puck, and he's probably not going to be prioritized there. So that said, I think he's on pace for 36 points. I think that's probably reasonable, and that would be a successful season for this guy. So yeah, if you just manage your expectations with Sanderson, he's a streamer at this point. He's blocking a decent amount of shots, hitting not so much. So, yeah, just pick him up when you need him. Pick him up when Ottawa has a good schedule, and just keep an eye on the power play deployment. If he gets back on that top power play, like it's him and Kalen Addison. They're very similar players. I think I would rather have Sanderson than Addison. I think he's more well-rounded.
For sure.
And certainly when we're not talking about fantasy, I would think Sanderson is probably the guy you would want there. Addison's very much an offensive player, and they're kind of minimizing him with his ice time, right? So he doesn't get in trouble. But Sanderson definitely more responsible. I think he's going to have a great career, just not this season.
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. I think Sanderson has a really good context there in Ottawa. Ottawa has consistently been one of the higher play driving teams at 5v5. They've given up a lot, but they've produced a lot as well in terms of chances and shots on goal. So I think that Sanderson has a good, even strength context to be able to put up that, like that 36-point pace almost exclusively on even strength. But yeah, with Shabbat there, it's pretty hard to see him, getting that extra 15 power play points that he might get if he were on the top power play, which would put him into that 50-point range where now all of a sudden you're pretty excited about what he might be. So, yep, I think at this point he's a streamer with upside. I would compare him a little bit to, somebody like Evan Bouchard. He doesn't put up the underlying stats the way that Bouchard does. I think Bouchard has more upside overall, but if you talk about team context where there's a lot of team scoring going on and the ability to get in on that, and then the potential to usurp the current top power play guy at some point, also there for both those guys. So that's a parallel I might draw as well. Guy you alluded to, number 4 on this list for us here tonight, Mo Sider. 1 point his last 5 games as well. 21 minutes, 37 seconds average time on ice, and the on ice numbers, the individual numbers, it all does not look good for Sider over this last little stretch. 161st amongst defensemen in the last 5 games in shots per 60, 140th in Corsi 4 per 60, so the team's not doing it either when he's on the ice. It's really looking kind of bleak for Sider right now. I don't know. Is this the second time for us to get super concerned about Mo Sider this season? It seemed like everybody was super concerned, then he was back and nothing to be worried about, and now everybody's super concerned once again. And Hronik has unseated him on the top power play, taken over with that Larkin unit. as the top power play defenseman, and Hronek has earned it, obviously, with what he's done this season. So what can Seider really offer us if he's a power play 2 guy, or do you see him, reclaiming that top role at some point in the near future?
I don't know. Not with the way Hronek is playing and not with the way he's playing, right? Like
Right.
it doesn't make sense. And I do like to think sometimes of what happens behind closed doors. Like, the coaches know a lot better than we do what's happening there, and they make those decisions. So, it's not like this guy was like, you're going to power play 2 instead of power play 1. It's like there's a reason, and I don't exactly know what the reason is, but clearly he's not playing to his potential, or that he did last year, right? And having a year like that raises expectations. So as a Canucks fan, I know when you raise expectations, the next thing that's going to happen is a horrible, plummeting, painful mess of a season. So, that said, this guy's still reasonable on the ice, but I think we can safely say, like, we're not going to get a season like last season. He could be in a Jake Sanderson situation, right? Like, he's going to have a great career, no question. But this to me just kind of proves how difficult it is to play in the NHL. He's only 21. He came out, I think I said this last week too, like, just players that I know, I've played with, like, young guys, they come in, they're super confident, they're used to being the best, and they parlay that into a nice season. And then it kind of sinks in, like, oh yeah, I can't just do that at will. You know what I mean? And he's probably getting in his own head, and that's kind of what we're seeing on the ice there. So, imagine your top 2D you picked this season: Mo Seider, Mackie Weegs. Whoa.
Yeah, if that's you out there, then send us a screenshot, and we will commiserate with you.
That's right. That's right. I will pay for some Apples and Gino's merch and send it down to your house, all right? Because that's just sad,
just cruel.
Right?
Yeah,
that is cruel. So
so Seider, definitely one of these guys who provides on the hits and blocks side of things, no questions asked there. So Bangers Cats, he's still valuable just for that alone, with the upside for points that we saw last year still somewhat in the cards. But yeah, this latest stretch, truly abysmal from Seider. Hronek has totally unseated him. It seems like it's affected potentially Seider's confidence at this point. I have to wonder. So Detroit, after being pretty decent, has now kind of fallen back a bit in terms of their offensive prowess as well. So it doesn't seem like the team level might be as exciting as we were hoping with all the additions at this particular juncture. Maybe it improves again. That's possible as well. But yeah, the overall outlook at this point in time, not so hot for Seider. Like, I'm thinking 40-point pace if this deployment holds up. Even that might honestly be a bit of a stretch, just because, like, he was on a 50-point pace last year. I'm saying that without actually checking it, so maybe I should check that.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he was on a roughly 50-point pace last year. That was with top power play all season long, and everybody was falling in love. And this year, the team might be a little better around him, but if he's not on that top power play, then really, what can you truly expect from him in terms of a point pace? And so I do think you got to adjust expectations on Seider and not think that even that 50-point pace is necessarily coming back at any point this season. And if that's a point where you want to move off of him for what you can get, and if you can find somebody to buy a little bit higher than what you think he might be able to do the rest of the season, then maybe you need to explore that as well, because I do think that the outlook for Seider is probably a little bit bleaker than some are still thinking. I think there are still people out there that are holding out hope for, a breakout season for Seider still, even after all this, and I don't really see that currently.
You kind of have to, because you drafted him so high. Like, he was in a lot of drafts I was in, he was in kind of that second tier of defensemen. Some people were taking him in the top tier. It's crazy stuff. And if I'm being honest, I always had to look at him. I'm like, ooh, yeah, because it's kind of an exciting name. You're like, oh yeah, look what he did last year. He can do even better this year. And he is a beast. Like, there's no question. I remember watching some of his highlights last year and some this year too. Like, he's a beast. He's a young kid, like, playing with men and, like, manhandling them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he's going to be awesome. I'll tell you what you do. You trade him straight up for Victor Hedman. All right. Anybody would do that. All right. Everybody's happy. All right. And throw Tony DeAngelo in there as well. And you got You got a little three-way. I don't even know where I'm going with this. All right, this is going off the tracks, but yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
All right. Let's move on. We got to talk about Jamie Benn, who's been, on the performing well side of this for so long, but now just 1 point in his last 5 games. Still, the time on ice is there, 16 minutes, 28 seconds average over those 5 games. 17% IPP, 6% shooting percentage, 9.4% on ice shooting percentage. Are you getting worried about Jamie Benn? Is this the regression we've been waiting for? It's been written on the walls, and it's only now coming to pass. What do we think about Jamie Benn moving forward?
Yeah, maybe I would have, but you're going to talk about some of his numbers. Like looking at those numbers, it's the main thing that's happened here is he's not converting, right? But it doesn't seem like anything else has really changed. So I think if you were in for Ben earlier, you should be in for Ben right now because it's probably going to level out, right? He has had a cold streak here, but Dallas hasn't been, lighting the world on fire their last few games here. So, and he picked up a goal in his last game. I think all signs are kind of it was a surprise, right? It was already a surprise. So I think you're already happy if you've got Ben. I think you can sort of expect less than what's happened, but much better than what he did last year, right? And he hits as well, right? So in Bangers Cats, you're liking Jamie Benn there. I think he should be rostered for sure. 1 point in his last 5 games, not awesome, but I don't know. Why don't you tell us about the numbers and see where we're at?
Yeah, the numbers are still quite good over these last 5 games. 30th in shots per 60, 26th in individual scoring chances for per 60, 11th in the league in Corsi for per 60. So the team's still throwing attempts on net, 44th in scoring chances for per 60. And that's kind of been the story. Like, obviously, Ben's still on that top power play. That power play is an elite unit. When it's all said and done, I'm pretty confident we'll finish top 3 in the league on the year, and Ben will be a part of that. So he's definitely going to get his fair share. Anybody, if you just, tack on 25 to 30 power play points on top of their totals, is going to get a pretty significant bump. So Ben can take that and add that to whatever he gets at even strength, and all of a sudden you're looking at a pretty solid season. Overall. Now, obviously, he has been overperforming to this point.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you look at his, season-long numbers, you see that the 15% on-ice shooting percentage, the 16% shooting percentage, neither of those numbers are going to stick around for the full season, I don't think. But, yeah, I think Ben, can still push 65, 70 points on the season, even in this deployment, if things go well. If things tail off for him a bit, which, you may want to project, he hasn't, sustained this kind of shot rate or anything like this for a while. It's been a few seasons since he's done anything like this. So if you want to project him to even take a step back from that, then down to like 60 points. But like you're saying, he's providing peripherals on top of that. So it's not like even on the nights when he's not scoring for you, he's leaving you high and dry. So Jamie Benn still plenty rosterable. If you're in a league where people are watching this really closely and now they're like, oh man, I got to get out on Jamie Benn. The hot streak's over. I got to sell him. Because he's going to come crashing back down to earth, then I'd still be interested in Jamie Benn at that kind of reduced expectation for the season. Because, yeah, the underlying stats say that he's still going to hang around and be a plenty relevant fantasy player rest of the season, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And you probably got this guy on the waiver wire. That's awesome, right? We all thought Jamie Benn was left for dead, and this guy's having a resurgence. And yeah, a lot of it's that power play, but it's clicking. And I think something good's going on in Dallas this season. They got a bit of a swagger, and I just like the team a lot over there right now. So it's not a surprise to me that a lot of their players are performing well.
Yep. All right, last player here we're going to talk about is Sam Steele. I wanted to talk about Steele particularly because there have been some questions about him, but also, Minnesota's got the same 4-game, 4-off night schedule that we were talking about with Calgary earlier. So definitely people are going to be looking at him ahead for this week in particular. 1 point in his last 5 games, despite playing top line with Zuccarello and Kaprizov. So really it's the deployment that's super attractive with Steele for most people, but the production hasn't been there. So what do we make of that? 17 minutes, 31 seconds, average time on ice. The 33% IPP, 8% shooting percentage, 6.7% on ice shooting percentage. All those numbers look a little bit low. Maybe you see a little bit of a rebound there. but this is a guy 116th in shots per 60, 115th in individual scoring chances for per 60. Nothing to write home about there. And then the on ice numbers are actually pretty bad, even though he's been playing with those two star players. 291st in Corsi 4 per 60, 209th in scoring chances 4 per 60. So really, what do we make of this? He's still far and away the top line center at this point. He did score a goal there on Saturday night. Pretty nice goal, all things told. So what are you doing with Steele? Is he a fire up for this week, given the sweet schedule, or are you too worried about him, getting demoted down the lineup?
Yeah, it honestly depends on the league you're in and how sharp everybody is, right? I think there are much better players on Minnesota to target this week, especially because Steele I think he's a center only, right? So, you may have a hard time getting him in your lineup. He may not be as good as some of the other guys, right? Although they do have the 4 games on the off night, so that's nice. But I'm not convinced that he's going to keep that deployment either, right? Like Fred Gaudreau has been playing that top line spot as well, right? And Eriksson Ek, he gets a ton of time, but they've got him toiling away on the third line as well. So I think they've got better options than Steele. I feel like he's there because they kind of have to, right? Because Hartman's injured. So I don't know. He's not a player that excites me, right? And certainly you're only picking him up for the potential offense, right? He's giving you nothing else. He doesn't shoot very much, doesn't hit, doesn't block, right? So, he's got a great schedule this week. Take a look at who's out there in Minnesota. I think there are much better players on Minnesota that you can pick up for this week. But if it's slim pickings, you could do a lot worse than Sam Steele, right? You want to get those 4 off games in, instead of picking up one of the other teams. So I don't know. And he's got a hell of a name as well. That's sweet. It should be a superhero. Sam Steele, center for the Minnesota Wild.
Definitely. The schedule is really nice. Minnesota's list of teams they're playing next week: Edmonton, Detroit, Chicago, Ottawa. You can score on any of those teams on any given night as well. So I do think that there is some potential for Steele. Definitely depends on, how deep your league is, who's available, who's not. If like Matt Boldy got dropped in one of your leagues when he was cold, then Boldy definitely you're picking up before Steele. I don't know, honestly.
Yeah, you got to get him too.
Yeah, Joel Eriksson Ek being on the top power play for sure I would take over Sam Steele. But beyond that, I don't know if I would take anybody over Steele just for the week, just because all it really takes, man, is Kaprizov going off for a week against these terrible teams and Steele just happening to be there.
Give it to Kaprizov
for the week, right?
Yeah. Would you take Steele over Gaudreau?
I would. Yeah, I would do that. I just think that the potential alongside a superstar level player is something I'm interested in when looking at streamers like this. Even if, they themselves are not doing terrific, like you could call it like the Alex Kerfoot rule. Every time he's up on the line with Tavares and Marner, then I'm interested in Alex Kerfoot, even though he himself continually disappoints on a season-long basis.
If plus minus is a stat in your league, then you're laughing, all right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I kind of feel about players in these situations. I wanted to bring up Sam Steele for that reason, even though, it hasn't looked great over the last little bit. He had one nice game there on Saturday, had a few shots, a few scoring chances, and a goal. As long as he's going to be on that top line with Kaprizov, a superstar level player, I'm interested. And yeah, I don't think there's a ton of major options from the other teams. Like from Calgary, I guess I would take Mangiapane.
I was going to say, or what about
Steele.
Backlund? I was looking at Backlund this for this week too, and I would take Backlund over Steele, I think.
I think they're the same tier for me, probably. I think Backlund is safer, but Steele potentially has more upside. I think that's probably the way I'd look at it.
Oh, you wild man.
Yeah, that's the way I'm looking at it.
Okay, that's how we does it, everybody.
That's how we do it. All right, well, that's all we got for the episode. Hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which you should definitely go check out. Many thanks to the band there for supplying the music for the podcast. Make sure you're checking out their Spotify as well. And that's it, folks. Much love.
Enjoy your week, everybody. Talk soon.